So who am I? I'm Colby Fayock. I'm the one hugging BB and Kylo Ren over there. I work with the dev community as a developer experience engineer at Cloudner. You can find me pretty much anywhere on the web by just Googling my name, as I'm the only one in the world. So we're going to start at the top with the king of e-commerce, which is Amazon. The first thing we see when we load this page is it's covered in media. It's a good way to showcase all the available products on the site, so it makes a lot of sense. This is the landing page of their fashion store, at least in the United States, which likely looks similar to a lot of top-level landing pages that you see throughout the internet. We have large images that are intended to showcase a bunch of the available products, and as we scroll down, we see that we have the ability to shop by categories, with images that represent each and every one of those categories. Once we dive in, we start to see a grid of images, like here on the product listing page. It's the easiest way to browse a large amount of products in a short period of time. So we put them in a list and we make it so that we can show a grid and be able to see all the different products we have available. But once we're on our product details page, we want to get a closer look and we want to choose our different options. So ideally, this means having several photos showing different angles of each of our products. Now, not to pick on Amazon here, but they're not necessarily doing anything innovative here. Now, I'm sure they A/B test every single detail of every single page, and just to make sure that it's not hurting conversion, which we'll get to later, but it's very practical and functional. So how can we use media to take e-commerce up to an experience a step further? So here we have Star Cadet, which I'm a fan of their Final Space merch. Any Final Space fans out there? It's a pretty niche TV show, so yeah, okay, awesome. Well, they take advantage of GIFs to display video-like category and product images. It's a bit more of a creative approach, taking a typically very static medium and making it a lot more exciting. Glasses USA allows potential customers to get a first-hand look about how the glasses will actually look on their face. Buying glasses is very hard. You want to be confident in the pair that you're going to buy. And traditionally, you'd have to hope for the best and hope for the return policy to allow you to send them back and return them. But this gets us a step closer to see how we can actually feel like we're in a real store. Or better yet, iBuyDirect actually gives you a real-time feed where you can try those on virtually. So moving around, it kind of looks like you're at a mirror inside of a real store. As far as the product page goes, you still need to have the ability to showcase each and every one of your products. People need to buy something and it needs to be very clear. So you don't want to be over creative. And like Nike here though, you can use embedded video to show the different angles and how the actual fit looks with each and every one of those pairs of clothes. Now, as creative as some of those things are, it's still fitting into a very traditional medium. The web is changing, so what does the future of e-commerce look like? Nike recently acquired Artifact Studios, which is a team who creates shoes and collectibles that are ready for the metaverse. It's similar to the collectible game that Nike has always been a part of, but now it's an investment into the digital world. And that wasn't Nike's only foray into this world. Nike also launched Nike Land on Roblox. It's an experience that allows you to connect to a digital version of Nike HQ. They have games and sports and a lot of community-oriented features. But they also have a showroom that lets you check out special Nike products, giving you the ability to even deck out your Roblox avatar with exclusive gear. And while we still have a lot of time before this kind of thing becomes incredibly mainstream, we're already starting to see a lot of creative solutions. There's a lot of change happening and it's happening fast. But let's talk about some of the more practical ways we can use media today. While the metaverse is likely coming at us fast, we still need to maintain an effective Web 2.0. Well, for some of you, this might seem like an easy one. It's super important to make sure that we're providing and displaying large, clear images and videos for our actual products. It's especially helpful to make sure that you have more than just a single wide shot of your photo. People care very deeply about the products that they're buying. So being able to have a clear and up-close look of those products is going to make sure that they're getting the quality that they're expecting. And we can't have e-commerce reference shots without Apple. Apple does a really great job at showcasing large, detailed imagery, but that's not always enough to make sure that the features of that photo are clear. So they make an extra point to highlight those features, diagramming the different points for the products, such as their potentially confusing use of 3 separate lenses on a single phone, where here they point out the differences and the features of each of those lenses. And while it's important to have those big clear images, which Wise, a tech company, does very good at, Lifestyle photos are a way to show your product in people's everyday lives. Whether the potential customer knows it or not, this helps them to kind of imagine how the product would fit into their own life. How could these wise headphones help you out? Well, they're so comfortable that maybe you'll forget to wear them. That's the title right there. ThinkGeek, a company I used to work for, sells cool things from all your favorite fandoms, or they used to sell cool things, but they took this a step further. Not only did they showcase the products in real life scenarios, they did it with a fun twist. So you can fully imagine yourself as Darth Vader baking with your R2-D2 measuring cups. But it makes a difference going this extra step because it helps make a stronger connection to your audience. Now, upgrading your media from the static images, we have video, which can help drive more context between the different visuals in a short period of time, along with audio to help with the verbal descriptions. But we can do better than a video that's embedded in a little pop-up like that. Like my examples earlier, we can use video in ways that will add to the experience without taking away from the existing experience. Under Armour instantly sets the tone on their homepage. Their audience is full of athletes, so being able to have a video like this takes you right into the gym and gets you hyped up and ready to buy some Under Armour gear. And we can even make our videos shoppable. As the video plays like anything else, we can make it interactive, allowing visitors to actually check out what the product is inside of the video without having to scavenge through the site. And you've all been there where you have to go through a list of items and it's all the way on the last page, but now you can actually find the product that you want to shop. So enough looking at a bunch of pictures. You can see what I did there? It was a good joke. How can we actually make this happen from a developer perspective? Now, in reality, some of these answers might not actually include technical solutions. Like, in order to show large, clear images, the first thing we need is large, clear images. But make sure when you have those images that you are showing them large and clear. And make sure that you're not over-compressing them or showing them super tiny, because people need to have a clear idea of what the product is when they're showing them. So make sure they're big and beautiful images on the page. But you can even take that a step further. You can allow people to zoom in on those images right on the page so that you can avoid unnecessary steps for taking them off the page. There are a lot of great zoom-based libraries that can help you out with this, such as React Inner Image Zoom, which gives us a similar experience to the unique low zoom that I showed on that previous slide. Or there's a lot of other traditional modal zooms, but those sometimes don't give the desired effect for an e-commerce store. So you could also try to replicate this on your own, where this is a very simplistic example, but once the zoom is enabled, you can dynamically grab the cursor position and you can update the image relative to its container. That way, it shows the basics of how we can actually start to replicate that kind of UX in our own projects. And providing point-based details like the Apple products are both a little bit easier and a little bit trickier. Adding some text overlaid on an image really isn't that bad, but each one of those lines are pointing precisely to the lens. And while we can do that pretty easily for one viewport size, realistically, most of us are trying to build responsive experiences. Again, this is a simple and incomplete representation, but we can start to see by using the resize listener and setting the coordinates based on the original image's width and height, where we can use percentages to kind of calculate where that's going to be and update the DOM as we're actually moving around the page. Now, lifestyle imagery is another one of those things where, unless you're also the photographer, we need creative support and imagery to actually achieve this. But we can still see that by being able to provide a nice banner like this without having to embed the image on the text. Well, by including the text on the page, we're helping both search for our pages as well as accessibility so people can actually read that. And also, it's likely easier to make this kind of thing responsive rather than having a single image that's going to either have huge text or really tiny text. Now, as far as video is concerned, yeah, I would imagine you could probably just throw a GIF right in there. And yeah, you could, but the GIFs are usually huge, especially GIFs like this where it's a decent size and decent length. So instead, we want to be able to have them at a big, high quality. So we can instead take advantage of actual video on the page where, depending on the use case, the file size likely will be a lot better for trying to actually do this. So we can use the HTML video element where we can hide all the controls and the players, and we can even set it to automatically play and loop so it looks like it's just a GIF on the page and it's able to show and provide that experience of getting people into the gym. Now, when leveling up your video and making it shoppable, this is where it starts to get a bit more complex, and you're likely going to have a custom player depending on your media solution that you're working with. But again, we can start to see how we can solve something like this. So maybe we do have a custom video player, but we can define our products where we can define what the product is, where in the timeline of that video it's actually located, and we can use the nodes to link to each and every one of those products throughout that time. Ultimately, it's creating a more interactive experience for your customers when they're trying to look at your products. Now, we have a lot of awesome tools at our disposal, but it's not always as easy as dumping a bunch of videos and images on our page. There are serious considerations that we need to take into consideration when we're actually trying to deploy these experiences to the web. We could be putting a lot of unnecessary load and eating up a lot of unnecessary bandwidth with huge images and huge videos. And that's going to severely slow down the page loads, hurting the experience, or worse, hurting your store's conversion rate. If you're not familiar, conversion rate is the percentage of your traffic that's actually going to buy something on your store. There's a ton of studies for how website speed directly correlates to conversion rate. eBay, for instance, found that a 0.5% increase in their conversion rate with a 100 millisecond load time improvement. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but eBay is worth over $10 billion. So just as an exercise here, as an example, 0.5% of 1 billion is 5 million. So that amount adds up very quickly. That means that while all your video and imagery might help build a great user experience, that media is going to take up the vast majority of the size of the page load. And if we don't pay attention to how we're actually loading it, we're going to blow our pages and destroy that conversion rate. So what can we do to help optimize that actual delivery? Well, here's some examples of some different images. To start off, I just grabbed this from Unsplash. But we have JPEG, which is a great option, a very traditional format for the web. But there's modern formats that we can use to help deliver high quality images at reduced file sizes. WebP and AVIF are two of those great options, and depending on the image, can bring some great drastic reductions in file size. We can also compress our images to a point where we're not impacting the visual quality, so not over compressing it. Maybe it won't matter for this little tiny thumbnail, but we've learned that we want to display these images really nice and big, right? So we want to make sure we still have these big, beautiful images that we're not over compressing. But we're able to let tech kind of optimize it automatically so that we can see how much we can compress it without providing that visual difference and actually ruining the image. We're not over optimizing, but we're also not wasting precious kilobytes in size when we're delivering these images. Now, if you're working with high quality images, your source files might be huge. If you serve them as is, the browser has to resize those images down anyways, which again, you're just wasting bandwidth. So resize those images to the sizes that you actually need. And don't try to just crunch the image just to get a smaller file size. Again, that's going to ruin the image experience that you're trying to deliver. And you'll end up with super blurry or pixelated images. But instead, modern image delivery can do this on the fly so that you can actually specify right where you're loading the image, the exact size you need so that you can take advantage of that. Now, bringing all these things together, we have some pretty amazing results. Using modern formats, letting tech automatically handle optimizing our images, and serving those images only at the sizes that we need, we were able to take this particular example down from 652 kilobytes to 76.6 kilobytes. Now, this is just an example, again, of an Unsplash image that I got. But imagine that you're in a scenario where you have a content management system and you have non-technical people adding images in there. You're going to get similar scenarios to this. So being able to leverage that tech to help reduce the file size is really going to help build a good experience. Now, these are all great options, but how can we make sure we are doing everything we can? Luckily, there's a lot of tools out there that we can use to help this, from inspecting our sites to helping actually build our sites. You may have already heard of web.dev, but it's a site from Google with a ton of educational resources for developers. On top of that, they have tools that can help you measure things like SEO, accessibility, and what we're talking about today, performance. Well, this is just a simple example of the results. We can see that they inspect the media that's actually on the page and see if we're conforming to the best practices. If they're not, they're going to let us know what's wrong with that. Like here, we're not taking advantage of modern formats and we're serving our images way too big. A similar tool that's meant specifically for media is Cloudinary's website image tool analysis. Like web.dev's measure tool, it's going to review your site and check out how you're actually serving media. It will show you exactly what that media is costing you in precious resources and what opportunities that you actually have to fix it. Like here, we can see that we're going to get benefits from serving from modern formats and what those benefits are going to be, like we saw in my examples earlier. Now, if we're actually trying to implement some of these tips, we have a responsive breakpoint generator. This was a project that was created by media experts that was actually sponsored by Cloudinary, which is where I work. Not only does it generate the code snippets for you, but it's actually going to serve as an educational resource so you can get a better idea of what responsive imagery is and how it actually works. So enough looking at a bunch of pictures. Wait, I already made that joke. So we're going to dive into some real code, well, briefly on a little code, and we're going to actually see how some of this works in practice. So we're going to check out some of the real-world benefits of image optimization. It's pretty common for the CMS that I had mentioned before for people to dump in these large images. So we're going to see how doing so similarly is going to actually be able to help see the impact live inside of a browser. And we can safeguard this by automatically optimizing all of our images using a tool like Cloudinary. In particular, I'm going to show an example using a Netlify build plugin, which is going to handle all this for you automatically. So I'm going to change my screen here, and hopefully I don't mess up the sharing with the events. I'm mirroring? Yes, I'm mirroring, right? Yeah. Okay. Let me just change my resolutions and make it a little easier to see. Okay, can everybody see decently well? Yeah, cool. Okay, first of all, I have this sample repository that I created, which if you're not familiar with the tool Astro, it's kind of similar to Gatsby or Next.js if you're familiar with those tools. It's a JavaScript framework that's going to help you build web apps. And really the only thing I'm using it for here is an example of just to get images on the page. But if we look at the actual demo application, it's literally just a bunch of images on the page. Now my goal here is to be able to show you what it looks like when you have these unoptimized images, what the impact on the page is going to be, and how we can actually fix it automatically. Now, to get started, I cloned this repository, and you can see in the timestamp here, I did it like 39 minutes ago, so I didn't do anything special to this page. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and the first thing I'm going to do is deploy this to Netlify. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm going to be authenticating my GitHub account with Netlify. And if you're not familiar with Netlify, I like to call it an auto DevOps tool, but it's really an easy way to deploy your web apps out to the web. It's a really awesome tool, and it has a free tier if you haven't checked it out. I highly recommend. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to find this repository. After my repositories actually load, I can select that, and we can even see that Netlify found the settings that I need to deploy this. So all I'm going to do here is click Deploy Site, and in the background, Netlify is going to clone down that repository that I created. It's going to build the project, and it's also going to deploy the project. So shortly here, we're going to have on Chipper Cho, if that's how you pronounce that, we're going to have a nice site that's basically a clone of what I showed a few seconds ago. Now this is going to take a few minutes to actually deploy. We can even see the build logs if I kind of look in here. But in the meantime, how are you all doing? Are you excited for some more talks for JSDayCAN22? Yeah? Awesome. So bear with me 1 second while this is, oh, it's actually done already. So that's one of the cool things about Astro is it builds so fast, and we see that it's already ready. So if I open this up in a new tab, again, this is just a clone of that original site that I showed you. But let's dig into the network tab. Let me make this a little smaller here. Now, if I select the images and I refresh the page, we can see everything that's currently loading on this page. Now, we see, right at the top, we have that beach photo along with all those other ones. Again, similar to my slide example before, these are just all images from Unsplash. But what we can start looking at the different things like the type. We have all these JPEGs, which is a pretty traditional format that we're all pretty familiar with. We can also see the size of all these images, and we can see how long it's taking to download each and every one of those images. Now, what I want to show you is how we can automatically optimize this and how we can do it just right inside with a simple little plugin. So I'm going to leave this tab open because it's going to help me showcase the differences to the changes I'm going to make. So I'm going to head back over to Netlify. I'm going to head over to the plugins section where inside of the directory I can search for Cloudinary, where I'm going to install this plugin. I'm going to install it on Chipper Cho. And the only other thing that I need to do to configure that is head over to my site settings, and please let me know if I'm going too fast. But we can head over to our site settings under Build and Deploy, and go into our environment variable. And once you have your free Cloudinary account, all you need to do is add your Cloudinary cloud name. And this is all inside the documentation if you take a look at the plugin online. But I'll also show all we need to do is add our cloud name, which we can find right inside of our Cloudinary dashboard. And I'm going to hit save. And then at this point, all I need to do is trigger a new deployment. So I'm going to head over to my production deployments, trigger deploy, deploy site. And again, we're off on our little waiting game where we're going to wait for Netlify to pull back down the project, rebuild it, and redeploy it. But as that's going, and we'll wait a second here, we're going to be able to start to see how Cloudinary is actually kind of tuning into this process and actually helping us to automatically optimize. Now we can see all the steps that are happening, where right now we're under the Netlify build step. We can see that we are installing this Netlify plugin for Cloudinary, which is what I just installed in the UI. And as we're going through, we see that I'm hooking into different build events in order to achieve this. Where the first thing I'm doing is on the build event, I'm creating redirects. Now, I'll explain that in a second here as to why I'm creating redirects in the first place, but if we scroll down a little bit more, we can see what I'm also doing is replacing all the on-page images with Cloudinary URLs. So that means the very first time you're going to hit that site, you're going to hit a Cloudinary URL. Now, at this point, we can see that it's already done, so let's open this up in a new tab. We can see that it looks exactly the same, right? But if I open up the network tab and I refresh again, we can see this time we have a different file type for every single one of those images. We can see the size, and maybe you don't remember it before. I'll switch back and forth a little bit. But if you do remember, it's drastically lower than what it was before. Now let me switch back and forth, and I'll do this a couple times just to see if you can notice the differences. But this is the optimized version. Keep an eye on the type, size, and time here. And if we go back and forth, we can see that that was drastically reduced. Now, if we look here at the bottom, we can see that 4.5 megabytes was transferred on this original site. But if we head over to the optimized, it's 1.5 megabytes. That's a lot of load. And we can even take that a step further where I'm not resizing these images at all. All I'm doing is the automatic quality and the automatic formatting so that we're compressing it so it's not visually different, as well as serving it in modern format so that we can get as small as a file as we can with the image that we're trying to serve. Now, I told you that I was going to explain the redirects before. Now, the tricky thing with JavaScript frameworks is when we're going through the Netlify build process, I'm able to scrape through all the HTML and really any of the files that are getting deployed. But it's not as simple to simply go through and replace all the images in JavaScript files. So while I can do that on the first page load to show the Cloudinary, I want to also make sure any images that are loaded are going to be served from this. So for instance, if I go to that site /images/beach.jpg, we can see that even though I loaded that, and I don't know why that didn't work, I must have gone to the wrong URL. But anyways, you can see that it redirected. Actually, let me see why it did that. Oh, there was an E in the JPEG, that's why. So I'll go to that again, images beach.jpg with an E. But now we can see that it's going to redirect automatically to that Cloudinary URL in a second here. And it's going to automatically optimize that for us. So that's going to be happening real time inside of the browser when this is requested. And as soon as I try to reload that, we can see that now it's stored in cache, so it's going to be very quickly loaded. But we can look at the URL here, which is the interesting thing about Cloudinary, where the way that it works is it's a URL-based API, where all I'm doing is plugging in these parameters, where it's it's for format auto, which is saying I want to automatically serve the best format for this particular browser. And there's also quality auto, which is going to do that automatic quality compression so that it's not visually different. Awesome. So does anybody have any questions about this particular? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up with the talk. Good? Okay. So let me try to switch back and see if I cannot break this presentation again. Okay, I think I'm going to have to reshare. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Okay, so just to quickly recap, we were able to see how easy it was to automatically optimize all of our on-page images. Okay. We also, sorry, I kept switching back and forth a little bit, I know. But we also saw that how that actually impacts the page load, both from a resource perspective and from a time perspective, and where we can help actually deliver better experiences for our visitors. If we pay more attention to our media, not only will we be able to responsibly build experiences that are great for the web, we're also going to be able to help ourselves out with our conversion rates to make sure that we are delivering as much product conversion as we can. But speaking of e-commerce, if you want to learn more about how to build your own online store, this is just a little ad for a course that I just recently put out, e-commerce product management and storefront, where we'll walk through building an online store, a full stack storefront with Next.js, Snipcart, and Graph CMS. And I'll include a link in my talk notes, but you can also head over to egghead.io. And that's it. If you want to learn more, I'm happy to answer any questions about the talk. You can also find me anywhere, again, at Colby Fayock. I'm the only one. And I'll also tweet out some stuff later if you want to find out more about the talk. Thank you. No? Presentation was that straight? No. Yes. Was there a particular one, or do you want me to walk through all of them? Sure. So the first one is web.dev, and then they'll have a link on that page for the measure tool, which is very helpful. The other one is webspeedtest.cloudinary.com. And again, if you go to that link at the end, I'll have all these links there to make it a little bit easier to find these rather than trying to remember or jot them down. So just to repeat the question was, it doesn't matter where you host your images, Cloudinary will automatically redirect. Is that correct? So yes and no. So with the Netlify build plugin, I'm automatically doing that redirect for you. So anything inside the images directory, if it's requested from that directory, which is also configurable, it will automatically redirect all those images. Now, if you're not using the Netlify build plugin, you can certainly do something similar. I'm just doing that in an automated way with the plugin. But Cloudinary has a ton of SDKs where you can access the images directly if you're storing them in your media, or you can even use what's called the Fetch API, which is actually what I was using in my demo, where you basically append the URL at the end of your Cloudinary host name, and it's going to automatically serve it from Cloudinary and give you those benefits. Yep. And then the other tool was responsive breakpoint generator.com. Cool. Anything else? Okay, well, if you already haven't, please make sure to stop by the Cloudinary booth. We have a ton of stickers. You got to help yourself. We also have little slips where you can get free extra quota for a new Cloudinary account. And if you take a selfie and share it online, if you already didn't, you can get a free unicorn. So, thanks, everybody.